seismic announcement, akin to a thunderclap echoing across the venerable lands of Britain and far beyond its shores, has brought with it an undeniable sense of finality, a conclusion many had long believed might never truly manifest. Following an arduous period spanning several years marked by increasingly strained relations, deeply personal public confessions, widely broadcast televised interviews, and behind-the-scenes negotiations that repeatedly appeared to yield no substantive progress, King Charles is now understood to have reached an irrevocable point of no return. The stark, potent phrase, now being quietly whispered throughout the ancient palace corridors and emblazoned across countless headlines, is deceptively simple yet profoundly devastating. He has drawn the line. For Prince Harry, this particular juncture feels distinctly different from all the preceding moments of tension and reconciliation. This is no mere temporary cooling-off period, not another quiet, hopeful pause born of the optimistic belief that the gentle passage of time might eventually mend old, festering wounds. Instead, this development is being unequivocally described as a decisive and deeply significant emotional and institutional shift, one that unequivocally signals there may indeed be no conceivable path back to the royal role as it was once understood and inhabited. To truly grasp the immense weight and gravity of this pivotal moment, it is absolutely essential to recall just how profoundly personal this enduring rift has consistently been. This transcends the superficial perception of merely a family disagreement amplified exponentially by the relentless glare of global fame. At its very core, it represents a fundamental clash between the unwavering demands of duty and the fervent pursuit of personal freedom, between the entrenched dictates of tradition and the urgent impulse for self-expression, and, most poignantly, between a father striving with every fiber of his being to protect an ancient, revered institution and a son resolutely determined to forge and define his own authentic truth. For a considerable number of years, King Charles was frequently portrayed in the public sphere as the embodiment of patience. He was seen as the quiet bridge builder, the steadfast figure who clung to the belief that genuine reconciliation remained a tangible possibility, even in the face of trust being repeatedly and profoundly shaken, time and again. Insiders with intimate knowledge of the royal household have long asserted that he deliberately kept the door to rapprochement open for far longer than many observers ever anticipated, harboring a deep-seated hope that with the beneficial passage of time, a necessary emotional distance, and the natural maturation of his younger son, Prince Harry might ultimately discover a way to reconnect with his family and his heritage without simultaneously undermining or tearing down the very foundational structure upon which the monarchy proudly stands. However, an irreversible shift has undeniably occurred. Sources situated in close proximity to the palace now suggest that this definitive action is not motivated by anger or a desire for retribution, but rather by an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. A profound emotional exhaustion that has taken its toll on the king personally, and an equally pervasive institutional exhaustion that has weary-eyed the entire framework of the monarchy. Following a relentless succession of public disclosures, pointed accusations, and what royal aides reportedly perceive as a deeply troubling pattern of private conversations being almost immediately transformed into public narratives, the king has allegedly arrived at the solemn conclusion that the damage inflicted is no longer reparable under the prevailing, challenging circumstances. From his considered perspective, the core issue extends far beyond simply what has been uttered. It encompasses what those pronouncements fundamentally represent: an irreparable and fundamental breach in trust, a fracture so deep it simply cannot coexist harmoniously with the immense responsibilities inherent in being a reigning monarch. What renders this particular moment so exceptionally striking and resonant is its precise timing. King Charles is not a young monarch blessed with many decades stretching ahead of him to experiment with various avenues for repair and reconciliation. Having ascended to the venerable throne later in his life, he is acutely and profoundly aware that his reign will ultimately be defined not by its considerable length, but by the enduring legacy he leaves behind. Consequently, every single decision he makes now carries the immense weight of centuries of history, and according to numerous astute royal commentators, he is increasingly and singularly focused on ensuring stability, preserving continuity, and vigilantly protecting the sacred crown for the benefit of future generations. Within this critical context, the ongoing, pervasive tension with Prince Harry has transcended its origins as merely a family issue. It has evolved into a significant risk factor, a constant and unwelcome source of unpredictability that gravely threatens to overshadow and detract from the vital work King Charles is determined to prioritize. For Prince Harry, this widely reported decision lands with the resounding finality of a heavy door slamming irrevocably shut. He has consistently spoken with raw openness about his profound feelings of alienation, his deeply held conviction that stepping away from his royal duties was an absolute necessity for the preservation of his own mental health, and his persistent desire to articulate his unique side of the complex story. From his personal point of view, many of his actions were never intended to cause destruction, but rather to serve as an explanation to clarify his motivations and experiences. Yet, the crucial distinction between intention and impact often proves to be vast and irreconcilable, and within the intricate, traditional royal framework, the cumulative impact of his actions has indeed been profound and deeply damaging. Every single interview granted, every carefully selected memoir excerpt published, and every televised moment has been perceived within the palace walls as yet another corrosive erosion of the private, once cherished bond that previously existed. The critical element of public perception looms large in the ongoing discourse. The enduring existence of the monarchy is predicated not merely upon the venerable weight of tradition, but fundamentally upon the unwavering bedrock of trust. This trust is an implicit covenant, a belief that the institution possesses the inherent capacity to transcend fleeting personal dramas, and instead embody a profound and continuous sense of national identity and stability. King Charles has reportedly become increasingly and profoundly concerned that the persistent and escalating tensions with Harry relentlessly draw the venerable institution back into predictable, exhausting cycles of public controversy. Each new, often sensational, revelation serves to reignite fervent debates, further polarize public opinion into discernible factions, and inevitably forces the palace into a perpetually reactive and defensive posture. For a monarch who is demonstrably determined to guide the institution through a period of modernization with quiet dignity and thoughtful deliberation, this incessant turbulence is perceived as an entirely unsustainable burden. Behind the veiled sanctity of inner chambers, confidants and advisors are said to frame this difficult decision not as an act of retribution or punishment, but rather as the establishment of a necessary and definitive delineation, a clear boundary. Drawing such a line does not necessarily imply a complete emotional severance or an absence of familial affection, nor does it equate to hatred. Instead, it signifies an unambiguous understanding, a crucial clarity. It represents the acceptance that certain relationships, in their current configuration and public manifestation, simply cannot be reconciled with the solemn and demanding role of the crown. From this vital perspective, the king's resolute stance is primarily about the essential self-preservation of the institution and its very survival, rather than stemming from any personal grievance or individual pique. Still, for a father and son, the emotional cost of such stark clarity is profoundly weighty, an immense burden to bear. What renders the situation even more poignant and deeply painful is the indelible tapestry of shared experiences and a history that cannot possibly be erased or rewritten. Prince Harry is far more than simply a royal who has chosen to step away from his duties. He is a son who, as a child of tender years, walked with unimaginable fortitude behind his beloved mother's coffin. He is a soldier who served his country with distinction, and a man whose character has been profoundly shaped by the dual forces of immense privilege and undeniable trauma. King Charles is not merely a monarch enforcing ancient rules and protocols. He is a father who has already endured a profound sense of irreparable loss, including that of his first wife and, in countless ways, the private family life he might have deeply yearned for. This deeply intertwined and shared past makes the very idea of no way back resonate not as a triumphant assertion of authority, but rather as a deeply tragic and sorrowful conclusion. Yet, according to those privy to the monarch's inner thoughts and familiar with King Charles's mindset, the line now being drawn also functions as an unequivocal declaration, a potent message extended to the wider royal family and, indeed, to the general public. It signals, with unmistakable gravity, that there are definitive limits, even to the most enduring patience. It asserts, with firm resolve, that the monarchy cannot effectively function if its most private and intimate matters are continuously exposed to public scrutiny and, even more concerningly, monetized for personal gain. Furthermore, it powerfully reinforces the fundamental idea that royal status is intrinsically linked with inherent duties and obligations, responsibilities that do not simply vanish or become dispensable merely because they prove to be inconvenient, uncomfortable, or personally painful. As the unfolding narrative continues to reveal its complex layers, one singular truth is becoming increasingly apparent. This pivotal moment transcends being merely a dispute between Harry and Charles. It is, at its core, about the very architectural blueprint of the monarchy's future shape and its enduring relevance. The king's reported decision reflects a broader, unwavering resolve to meticulously define precisely what the institution will and will not tolerate moving forward into a new era. For Harry, it may signify the ultimate and perhaps painful necessity of finally accepting that the chapter he chose to close cannot be revisited or reopened in the same manner as before. And for the world watching with keen interest, it marks the end of an era characterized by lingering uncertainty and the possibility of maybe, replacing it with a stark, sobering, and undeniable sense of absolute finality. As this weighty sense of ultimate conclusion permeates the atmosphere, the deeper implications begin to ripple outward, touching not merely the immediate family members, but extending throughout the entire royal structure and the broader edifice of the royal establishment that surrounds them. For years, there was a long-held, implicit conviction among astute observers that no matter how strained or contentious relations became, the profound and enduring bond between a father and his son would, in due course, eventually override rigid protocol and public spectacle. That deeply ingrained belief now appears to be undergoing a discernible erosion, slowly but surely fading into the past. According to those with privileged access to the inner workings of the palace, King Charles III has, after much contemplation, come to accept a profoundly difficult realization, that personal reconciliation, however deeply desired, simply cannot come at the expense of the crown's unimpeachable integrity and standing. In his considered view, the monarchy cannot ethically or practically be placed in a vulnerable position where its private workings and internal dynamics are perpetually susceptible to ongoing exposure and public dissection, especially when that exposure emanates from one who once stood so intimately at its very heart. This profound understanding, it is reported, was not forged in a single instant or through one isolated event. Instead, it was meticulously shaped by a cumulative tapestry of occurrences, a series of moments that, taken individually, might have been forgiven or overlooked, but which, when woven together, formed an undeniable and persistent design that the king could no longer conscientiously ignore. Each public statement, each carefully crafted revelation presented as his personal veracity, continually reinforced a pervasive sense within the palace that the delicate, sacred line between private family matters and public spectacle had been irreversibly crossed, creating a chasm that could not be bridged. What inflicted the most profound hurt, as aides suggest, was not solely the content of what was articulated, but rather the pervasive feeling that genuine efforts at private dialogue and confidential resolution were repeatedly undermined and preempted by public commentary and pronouncements. The delicate architecture of trust, once splintered, proved to be an almost insurmountable challenge to reconstruct. From King Charles's discerning perspective, there exists a profound generational responsibility that is inextricably interwoven into the very fabric of his reign. His stewardship, in his thoughtful estimation, transcends the mere administration of the present day. It encompasses a far broader vision, focused on meticulously setting enduring precedents that will inevitably guide and shape the monarchy for future generations. He is acutely and perhaps even painfully aware that the meticulous manner in which he navigates and ultimately resolves this complex situation will undeniably establish and define expectations for many years to come. Should clear and unequivocal boundaries not be firmly established and rigorously upheld in the present juncture, a profound question arises concerning the overarching message that would be inadvertently transmitted regarding the imperative of accountability within the venerable institution of the royal family. The monarchy, after all, is not simply a casual family enterprise or a private concern. It is a foundational constitutional institution, deeply and historically woven into the rich tapestry of the nation's identity and governance. Allowing ongoing internal conflict to perpetually spill and fester endlessly into the public sphere risks a gradual but significant erosion of the fundamental respect and public trust that are absolutely essential for its continued sustenance and legitimacy. For Prince Harry, the multifaceted consequences of this significant institutional shift are deeply, unequivocally personal. He has consistently and eloquently articulated that his momentous decision to step away from his senior royal duties was fundamentally about self-preservation, about safeguarding his mental well-being and fiercely protecting his immediate family unit from perceived pressures. He has spoken poignantly and extensively of feeling perpetually unheard, consistently unsupported, and inextricably trapped within a rigid system that, in his perception, actively suppressed his individual private well-being. From his unique vantage point, the act of speaking out, far from being an act of betrayal against his family or institution, was, in his profound belief, an act of personal liberation. Yet, such a profound liberation frequently exacts a considerable and often unforeseen price, and that cost now appears to manifest as the seemingly permanent relinquishment of the significant role he once occupied within the intimate and privileged royal inner circle. What further complicates this intricate narrative is the sharply divided and emotionally charged reaction from the global public. There are many individuals who deeply sympathize with Prince Harry, perceiving him as a courageous figure who dared to challenge an archaic institution and consequently bore the heavy cost of his defiance and pursuit of personal autonomy. Conversely, an equally vocal and steadfast segment of the public views his actions as an undeniable breach of fundamental loyalty and duty, steadfastly asserting that the immense privilege associated with royal status invariably carries with it profound obligations and responsibilities that cannot simply be discarded at will. King Charles finds himself precariously positioned in the very epicenter of this pronounced societal chasm, keenly aware that any definitive action he undertakes will be subjected to intense scrutiny, fierce criticism, and interpreted through an immeasurable number of diverse lenses. Therefore, the act of drawing a definitive line of demarcation transcends being merely a personal inclination. It evolves into a profoundly strategic imperative, bearing the weight of future stability. There is also the formidable shadow of history looming large and omnipresent over this contemporary moment. The venerable British monarchy has, across the centuries, successfully navigated and ultimately endured an immeasurable number of historical challenges, including profound scandals, solemn abdications, and intricate family rifts, often achieving survival and continuity through quiet, behind-the-scenes adaptation and discreet evolution. What renders this particular situation uniquely challenging and unprecedented is its undeniable modern visibility. In this current epoch of ubiquitous streaming platforms and pervasive social media, virtually nothing remains truly private for an extended duration. Every carefully measured silence is meticulously analyzed for hidden meanings, and every official statement is painstakingly dissected by a global audience. For a monarch like King Charles, earnestly endeavoring to steer the ancient institution toward a more serene, stable, and service-oriented public image, the persistent and unfolding saga involving Prince Harry represents a vexing distraction that stubbornly refuses to recede from public consciousness. Those positioned intimately close to King Charles consistently suggest that his steadfast stance is deeply rooted in an overarching desire for a profound sense of peace and stability within the royal family. Even if the attainment of that desired tranquility necessitates a permanent separation rather than a cherished and hoped-for reconciliation, by acknowledging and accepting that certain relational dynamics simply cannot effectively function within the established royal framework, he is actively endeavoring to forge both emotional and operational clarity for all involved. This measured approach does not, by any means, imply that he has ceased to care deeply about his son or harbor paternal affection. Rather, it signifies a poignant realization that he has regretfully ceased to believe that the fundamental nature of their relationship can continue in the very same public and institutional manner it once did. The metaphorical door, as some sagely articulate, is not violently slammed shut in a fit of anger, but rather gently and deliberately closed in a posture of profound resignation, acknowledging an unalterable reality. For Prince Harry, this stark and undeniable reality compels a rigorous personal reckoning. The once cherished hope that the mere passage of time alone might eventually heal the deep and painful rift now appears increasingly fragile and indeed, almost illusory. If there is, in truth, no conceivable pathway back into the heart of the institutional fold and its public roles, then the very identity he meticulously cultivated and held so dear as a senior royal becomes a distinct chapter that is definitively and irrevocably concluded. Such an outcome does not, of course, erase the indelible marks of his past or nullify his inherited title, but it fundamentally and profoundly alters their inherent meaning and significance within the public eye. He is no longer to be perceived as a prince patiently waiting within the hallowed confines of the institution, but rather as a prominent figure permanently positioned outside its operational boundaries, his public persona now defined as much by his deliberate departure as by the circumstance of his birth. This significant paradigm shift also inevitably raises searching questions concerning the future dynamics and operational cohesion of the royal family as a collective entity. Other prominent members of the family are undoubtedly watching these developments with exceptionally keen interest, acutely aware that the king's decisive actions and pronouncements are setting a critical and enduring tone for the entire institution. It unequivocally signals that unity, discretion in personal matters, and unwavering loyalty to the crown are not merely optional virtues to be selectively embraced, but rather foundational and utterly essential pillars upon which the very stability and longevity of the monarchy rest. While the venerable institution has demonstrably proven its capacity to evolve and adapt through the ages in response to societal changes, it is equally clear that it will not undertake such evolution at the expense of its most fundamental and cherished core principles. In that profound sense, the precise line drawn with Prince Harry thus becomes not only a personal boundary but also a definitive marker and an instructive precedent for every other individual within the wider royal sphere. Emotionally, the profound tragedy inherent in this unfolding situation remains utterly unavoidable, a poignant and deeply felt reality for all who observe it. A father and son, once inextricably bound by the crucible of shared loss and united by the solemn weight of shared duty, now find themselves existing on diametrically opposite sides of what appears to be an unbridgeable, ever-widening divide. The indelible image of a young Harry, his small figure bravely walking behind his beloved mother's coffin with his father, Charles, steadfastly by his side, continues to resonate with an extraordinary and enduring power among the public. It serves as a stark and necessary reminder that beneath the lofty titles and the clamorous headlines, there are, at their core, only human beings, profoundly shaped and irrevocably altered by the relentless forces of grief, the immense pressure of expectation, and the bitter sting of misunderstanding. That deeply interwoven shared history, stretching back through formative years, makes the present rupture in their relationship feel all the more acutely painful, a wound that refuses to heal. As the entire world tirelessly continues to speculate upon the intricacies and implications of this familial schism, one singular aspect stands out with undeniable clarity and force. This is emphatically not merely a temporary pause, a brief interlude before an inevitable reconciliation. All available indications and subtle cues suggest, with increasing certainty, that King Charles III genuinely believes that forthright clarity is ultimately a far kinder approach than the perpetuation of any false hope, however comforting it might initially seem. By drawing this definitive line now with such resolute conviction, he may well be attempting to prevent the accumulation of even greater hurt and deeper disappointment further down the road, even if the immediate, present pain is undeniably severe and deeply felt. For Prince Harry, the most viable path forward likely lies in fully and unreservedly embracing the entirely new life he has so deliberately chosen for himself, without holding on to any lingering expectation of reconciliation on terms dictated solely by the royal institution. And for the venerable monarchy itself, this pivotal moment represents nothing less than a decisive and monumental step toward fundamentally redefining its very essence for a completely new era, one where boundaries are not only clear but also unequivocally enforced, even when the edges of those boundaries cut with a profound and lasting depth. As the metaphorical dust continues its slow and deliberate process of settling, the long-term, far-reaching consequences of this significant rupture are steadily beginning to take concrete shape in ways that extend far beyond the immediate sensational drama. What is currently unfolding before our eyes feels considerably less like a fleeting breaking news moment designed for instant consumption and much more like the quiet, weighty aftermath of a monumental decision, one that is destined to echo through the corridors of history for many, many years to come. For the monarchy, the message emanating from this situation is becoming unmistakably clear and unambiguous. The era of emotional ambiguity, characterized by uncertainty and unspoken tensions, has now been definitively replaced by a new paradigm of structural certainty and unwavering resolve. And for Prince Harry, The profound realization is slowly but surely crystallizing within him that whatever remnants of a relationship might persist with his father will, from this point forward, exist entirely outside the traditional framework of royal life as the world once knew and understood it. From the deeply considered perspective of King Charles III, this precise moment in time is fundamentally about the sacred duty of stewardship. He has patiently waited for many long decades for the ultimate responsibility of the crown, meticulously observing the intricate workings of the institution from both its innermost sanctum and from just outside its powerful center of gravity. Throughout his extensive observation, he has witnessed firsthand how unresolved personal conflicts can fester and grow into corrosive wounds, how silence can be tragically misread and misinterpreted, and how the fickle tides of public sympathy can shift in unforeseen and often unpredictable ways. Now, as the reigning king, he is reportedly determined not to allow any lingering uncertainty or unresolved issues to define his reign. Drawing such a clear and decisive line, painful as it undoubtedly may be for all involved, is his unequivocal way of asserting that the monarchy must move forward with purpose and conviction, without constantly looking over its shoulder at past grievances or potential future disruptions. There is also an undeniable and pervasive sense that this momentous decision is as much about the vital act of protection as it is about adherence to fundamental principle. It is, certainly, about the steadfast protection of the ancient and revered crown itself, but it is equally about the safeguarding of those loyal individuals who remain steadfastly within its intricate embrace. Each new wave of controversy, each fresh public disclosure, has consistently had far-reaching ripple effects on other, often innocent members of the royal family, frequently forcing them into uncomfortable and defensive positions that they neither chose nor desired. By definitively closing this challenging chapter with Harry, the king may be earnestly attempting to shield the rest of the venerable institution from any further collateral damage and unnecessary emotional strain. In taking such a bold and definitive action, he unmistakably signals that the monarchy will no longer be passively shaped by reactive responses to external pressures, but rather by deliberate, considered intention and a clear vision for its future. For Prince Harry, the emotional terrain that lies ahead is undoubtedly complex, fraught with challenges, and at times, likely to prove unforgiving in its demands. He has meticulously built a new life for himself, a life now explicitly defined by fierce independence, passionate advocacy, and a compelling narrative centered on his deeply personal truth. Yet, the profound severing of his intrinsic royal ties is not something that can be fully neutralized or entirely erased by any measure of success achieved elsewhere, no matter how substantial. No matter how far he travels across continents or how deeply he invests his boundless energy into new projects and philanthropic endeavors, the omnipresent shadow of his royal origins will, without question, always faithfully follow him. Knowing, with absolute certainty, that the door back to his former royal life has been effectively and irrevocably closed may indeed bring a certain, albeit stark, clarity to his path, but it also carries with it an undeniably profound and lingering sense of loss. What truly makes this entire situation especially striking and deeply affecting is the palpable absence of celebration from either side. There is no discernible sense of triumph or victory, but rather an overwhelming and pervasive air of resignation, a quiet acceptance of an unalterable reality. This is not, at its heart, a story of an heroic triumph over perceived betrayal, nor is it a dramatic tale of righteous rebellion over entrenched tradition. Instead, it is a profoundly human story of fundamentally incompatible realities, two distinct worlds that simply cannot coexist within the same framework. Harry's deeply held vision of radical transparency, authentic self-expression, and unwavering emotional honesty exists in direct and irreconcilable tension with an ancient institution meticulously built upon the pillars of discretion, unwavering continuity, and the paramount importance of collective responsibility. King Charles, faced with these powerful and opposing forces, appears to have made the difficult choice to pursue the path that most effectively preserves the monarchy's core identity and its enduring legacy, even if that painful decision ultimately costs him a closer and more intimate relationship with his beloved son. The evolving tapestry of public sentiment continues its intricate weave, yet amidst its shifts, a profound and undeniable recognition is steadily taking root. This particular chapter, unfolding before our collective gaze, may indeed represent the final act of its distinctive kind. The incessant hum of conjecture, once fueled by whispers of potential reconciliation, the tantalizing prospect of clandestine meetings, and the ever-present hope for future returns, is now gracefully receding. In its place, a more profound and sober understanding begins to emerge, gently nudging aside the more fanciful narratives. Individuals are increasingly coming to terms with the stark reality that some deep-seated rifts, once thought mendable, simply do not heal. This is not necessarily due to an absence of goodwill or the presence of malice, but rather because the very bedrock upon which these relationships once stood has undergone transformations too dramatic, too fundamental, to ever fully revert. In this poignant sense, the unfolding saga transcends the gilded confines of royalty, resonating with a universal human experience, touching upon the timeless themes of familial bonds, the crucial establishment of personal boundaries, and the often painful, weighty choices that the journey into adulthood inexorably demands. Furthermore, a broader and increasingly influential cultural context demands our thoughtful consideration. Contemporary audiences, shaped by an era of heightened awareness, frequently extend their empathy and understanding towards individuals who bravely challenge established, powerful systems. Yet, paradoxically, these same audiences harbor a distinct wariness of perpetual conflict, an aversion to endless cycles of discord. As the hands of time continue their relentless march forward, the fervent appetite for endlessly rehashing old grievances and reliving past hurts is anticipated to gradually diminish, slowly fading into the backdrop. This waning desire will likely be supplanted by a deeper, more fundamental yearning for a definitive resolution, even if that resolution ultimately manifests in the form of an enduring separation. King Charles's reported and increasingly firm stance appears to align with this significant societal shift, offering not an unending procession of expectation and subsequent disappointment, but rather a clear, albeit perhaps uncomfortable, endpoint to a protracted narrative. For the venerable institution of the monarchy itself, the ramifications are undeniably significant and far-reaching. By courageously drawing a distinct and firm boundary in the present moment, His Majesty King Charles is not merely reacting to circumstances. He is, in fact, meticulously establishing a clear and enduring framework that future generations, poised to inherit the mantle of responsibility, will undoubtedly navigate. This decisive action serves to illuminate with unprecedented clarity what it truly signifies to be an integral part of the royal fabric and, conversely, what it means to exist beyond its immediate embrace. This much-needed distinction effectively reduces the expansive and often bewildering gray areas that have, for too long, been a source of considerable confusion and public scrutiny. Such newfound clarity, a beacon in previously murky waters, holds the profound potential to ultimately strengthen the institution, allowing it to reorient its focus with renewed vigor on its core tenets of selfless service, the preservation of cherished traditions, and a thoughtful, measured approach to gradual modernization. This refined focus can then proceed unburdened by the constant, corrosive threat of internal rupture spilling forth into the unforgiving glare of public view. Nevertheless, it is imperative to acknowledge that none of these strategic realignments or institutional clarifications can, or ever will, erase the profound human cost embedded within this narrative. At the very emotional core of this unfolding story persists the poignant connection between a father and a son, two individuals who once shared moments of unrestrained laughter, endured shared grief, and harbored a powerful, intertwined sense of shared destiny. The once familiar image of them standing shoulder to shoulder during moments of profound national significance now feels almost ethereal, like a cherished relic painstakingly preserved from a lifetime that seems increasingly distant. This deeply personal loss, this profound sense of absence, is not a quantifiable metric that can be easily measured in the cold, objective terms of constitutional adherence or fluctuating public approval ratings. It resides instead in the quiet chambers of the heart, a deeply personal wound that lingers persistently beneath the polished surface of every official statement and within the calculated silence that often follows. As the intricate tapestry of this narrative continues its slow, deliberate unraveling, one singular truth emerges with ever-increasing and undeniable clarity. This complex unfolding is not, at its heart, about the simplistic notions of victory or defeat, of winning or losing a perceived battle. It is, fundamentally, about the profound act of acceptance. Acceptance that the monarchy, much like any venerable human institution, possesses inherent and immutable limits to its reach and its capacity. Acceptance that the deeply personal journey of healing does not always, nor is it required to, align seamlessly with the broader demands of collective responsibility or institutional decorum. And, perhaps most significantly, acceptance that some chosen paths, once embarked upon with conviction, lead irrevocably away from their initial starting points, offering no guarantee of a return journey to the familiar landscapes of the past. Ultimately, King Charles's decisive act of drawing a definitive line in the sand is far less a flamboyant, dramatic gesture and far more a quiet, yet profoundly significant, acknowledgement of an undeniable reality. For Prince Harry, the monumental challenge that now lies before him is to fully and authentically inhabit the world he has meticulously constructed for himself, a world unburdened by the need to anchor his future to a past that, by its very nature, no longer extends a welcoming embrace. And for the multitude of observers across the globe, watching this unfolding drama with a mixture of fascination and empathy, this pivotal moment serves as a powerful and enduring reminder that even the most powerful and storied families are not, by any measure, immune to the intricate complexities of love, the weighty imperatives of duty, and the often irreversible consequences of the choices we make.